There's a strange atmosphere building around Rangers right now, and if you've been following closely, you'll know exactly what I mean. On paper, everything looks like it's moving in the right direction. The team is picking up points, the goals are coming with more consistency, and that gap at the top of the table doesn't feel quite as daunting as it did not long ago. But once you look beyond the scorelines, there's a different conversation starting to take shape, and it's one that's getting harder to ignore with each passing match. Even in games where Rangers come out on top, there's this lingering sense of unease, especially when it comes to the back line. It's not just about conceding chances, it's the manner in which those moments are unfolding. There are spells where the defensive structure looks uncertain, hesitant, almost fragile under pressure. And that's where the spotlight has started to intensify, because while attacking football can win matches, defensive stability is what sustains a title challenge over time. That concern has now been pushed right into the center of the discussion, largely thanks to some brutally honest analysis that sparked debate among supporters. The criticism wasn't subtle, and it certainly wasn't softened. It was direct, it was cutting, and it raised serious questions about one player in particular. When a voice so closely associated with the club speaks in those terms, people listen, and more importantly, they start asking whether there's truth behind the words. The focus has landed heavily on Jon Souder, and not in a positive way. There's a growing feeling that something just isn't quite right with him at the moment. Confidence, that invisible yet vital part of any defender's game, seems to have taken a significant hit. You can see it in the small details, the hesitation before committing to a challenge, the positioning that's just a fraction off, the overall body language that doesn't quite reflect a player fully in control of his game. And at this level, those margins make all the difference. What makes the situation even more intriguing is the contrast within the defensive unit itself. While one part of the back line is being questioned, another has quietly been building a case for consistency and reliability. The partnership that had been developing between Naserga and Emmanuel Fernandez had started to bring a sense of balance that Rangers had been searching for earlier in the season. There was a rhythm to their play, an understanding that allowed the team to push forward with a bit more confidence, knowing there was a solid foundation behind them. When that pairing was disrupted, even in a match that ended in victory, it didn't go unnoticed. In fact, it seemed to amplify the existing concerns rather than silence them. The decision to rotate, to reintroduce different options at the back, has now become a talking point in itself. Because when something appears to be working, any change invites scrutiny, especially if it coincides with moments of vulnerability. And that's where the bigger question starts to emerge. What is the best path forward for Rangers as the season approaches its most critical phase? Do you persist with experience, trusting that form can be rediscovered and confidence rebuilt? Or do you lean into what has recently shown promise, even if it means making bold calls that could reshape the defensive hierarchy? It's not an easy decision, and it's one that carries weight beyond just a single match. Every selection now feels like it has implications for the title race, for momentum, for belief within the squad. The coaching staff are being forced to weigh short-term trust against long-term stability, and that balancing act is becoming more delicate with each passing week. At the same time, there's an undeniable sense that Rangers are evolving as a team. The attacking intent is clearer, the movement in the final third is sharper, and there's a willingness to take control of matches that perhaps wasn't as evident earlier in the campaign. But football at this level rarely allows for imbalance. Progress in one area often exposes weaknesses in another, and right now, that defensive uncertainty is the one element preventing the picture from feeling complete. With important fixtures looming, the pressure isn't just on the players, it's firmly on the decisions being made behind the scenes. Every lineup choice, every tactical tweak, every substitution is now being analyzed through this lens of defensive stability. Because in a season where margins are tight, even a slight vulnerability can be the difference between pushing forward and falling short. And as this debate continues to grow, it's becoming clear that it won't be resolved overnight. Performances in the coming matches will only add more fuel to the discussion, especially if the same patterns continue to appear. For Rangers, the challenge isn't just about winning games anymore. It's about convincing everyone watching that they have the balance required to sustain this push all the way to the end. While much of the attention has been centered on the defensive uncertainty, There's another storyline quietly gaining momentum within Rangers, and it's beginning to feel just as significant as anything happening at the back. What started as a relatively low-profile addition to the squad has now developed into one of the most intriguing narratives of the season, and it revolves around the rapid rise of Naserga. Not long ago, expectations surrounding him were fairly modest. He arrived without the same level of spotlight that often follows high-profile signings, and there was an understanding that time would be needed for him to adapt to the demands of Scottish football. The pace, the physicality, the intensity of the matches, all of it can take a period of adjustment, especially for a player still carving out his place at this level. But what's unfolded in recent weeks has gone far beyond a gradual settling-in period. Since returning from international duty, there's been a noticeable transformation in his performances. It's not just about improvement, it's about presence. He's no longer simply fitting into the system, he's actively shaping it. There's a growing authority in the way he approaches defensive situations, a confidence in stepping forward, reading the game, and imposing himself in key moments. It's the kind of development that doesn't just benefit the player individually, it lifts the entire defensive structure around him. A large part of that has come through his understanding with Emmanuel Fernandes. Together, they formed a pairing that offers a blend of qualities Rangers had been missing earlier in the campaign. Fernandes brings composure and physical assurance, the ability to deal with aerial threats and organize the line, while Giga complements that with recovery speed, aggression in duels, and a willingness to break forward when the opportunity presents itself. That balance has allowed the team to play with a higher line, to be more progressive in possession, and to trust that they have the tools to recover if things break down. What's particularly striking is how quickly that chemistry has developed. Defensive partnerships often take time to build, requiring communication, understanding, and consistency of selection. Yet in a relatively short period, there's been a sense of cohesion between them that feels natural rather than forced. It's that kind of connection that can become the backbone of a successful side, especially during the decisive stages of a season. However, just as this partnership begins to look like a long-term solution, a new layer of complexity emerges. Giga's situation is far from straightforward. Despite his growing influence on the pitch, his future remains uncertain, and that uncertainty hangs over everything Rangers are trying to build. Being on loan means that, no matter how well he performs, there are factors beyond the club's immediate control that will ultimately shape what happens next. Behind the scenes, preparations are already underway for what is expected to be a significant period of change in the summer. There's a clear intention to strengthen the squad, to refine the system, and to address areas that still require improvement. The defensive unit is right at the center of those plans, which makes Giga's situation even more critical. On one hand, he represents continuity, a player who understands the system and has already proven he can thrive within it. On the other, securing his future would likely require navigating a financial landscape that isn't straightforward. The club that holds his contract invested heavily in his potential, committing to a long-term deal that reflects both belief in his ability and an expectation of future value. That naturally places Rangers in a challenging position if they wish to make his stay permanent. Any negotiation would have to take into account not just his recent performances, but also his age, his development curve, and the market demand for players with his profile. There's also the broader context to consider. If his parent club finds itself needing to reshape its own squad, particularly in response to changing circumstances, players like Giga become even more valuable. A young defender who has gained experience, improved his consistency, and shown adaptability in a competitive environment is exactly the kind of asset that clubs look to reintegrate rather than release. That possibility alone adds another layer of uncertainty to Rangers' hopes of keeping him. At the same time, there's no clear indication that a straightforward path to a permanent deal exists. Without a predefined agreement in place, any move would rely on open negotiations, and that often means dealing with fluctuating valuations and competing interests. For Rangers, that creates a delicate situation where they must decide how far they are willing to go to secure a player who, while still developing, has already become a key part of their system. Financially, it's a decision that cannot be taken lightly. Investing a significant amount in a single player always carries a degree of risk, particularly when there are multiple areas within the squad that may also need attention. It becomes a question of priorities, of balancing immediate impact against long-term planning. Do you commit heavily to retain a player who has proven his worth, or do you spread those resources more broadly in an attempt to strengthen the squad as a whole? What makes this situation so compelling is that it reflects a challenge faced by many clubs operating just outside the very top tier of European football. Identifying talent, developing it, and benefiting from its growth is one thing. Holding on to that talent, especially when larger financial forces come into play, is something else entirely. Rangers have clearly benefited from Giga's rise, but turning that short-term success into a lasting foundation is a far more complex task. And as the season edges closer to its conclusion, every performance he delivers only adds to the stakes. The better he plays, the stronger his case becomes, not just for Rangers, but for anyone watching. It's a situation where success brings both opportunity and complication, where progress on the pitch creates difficult questions off it, and where the outcome remains uncertain despite everything that's been achieved so far, as these questions continue to build in the background. What makes the situation even more fascinating is how naturally Giga has taken on responsibility in high-pressure moments. It's one thing to perform well when the spotlight isn't fully on you, but it's another entirely to deliver when expectations begin to rise and every action is being scrutinized. In recent matches, he's shown a level of composure that suggests he's not fazed by that shift. Instead of retreating into a safer style of play, he's leaned into the challenge, becoming more assertive in his decisions and more vocal in his role within the defensive line. You can see it in the way he steps out to intercept passes before danger fully develops, or how he tracks runners with a determination that reflects both physical ability and growing awareness. These are not just reactive movements anymore. They're proactive, calculated actions that show a deeper understanding of the game. And for a team trying to maintain consistency, having a defender who reads situations early can make a massive difference over the course of a match. There's also an increasing sense that his presence is influencing those around him. Defensive units thrive on trust, and when one player begins to show reliability, it often allows others to play with more freedom. That knock-on effect has been noticeable, particularly in how Rangers transition from defense into attack. With greater confidence at the back, the team has looked more willing to commit numbers forward, knowing there's a safety net in place capable of handling counter-threats. At the same time, the reality remains that none of this guarantees what happens next. Football moves quickly, and situations can change just as fast as they develop. What feels like a perfect fit today can become complicated tomorrow, especially when contracts, finances, and long-term planning all come into play. For Rangers, the challenge is not just recognizing the value of what they currently have, but finding a way to secure it without compromising other areas of the squad that also demand attention. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. A ripple of unease has swept through FALKIRK camp in the hours building up to their looming clash with Rangers, as whispers of a late-breaking development begin to gather pace. While nothing has been formally confirmed, sources close to the situation suggest the balance may have tilted ever so slightly in favor of the Glasgow side. There is a sense that something shifted behind the scenes, a tweak, a decision, perhaps even a fitness concern, and it has not gone unnoticed among those watching closely. FALKIRK, who had been quietly confident of making a proper contest of it, are now said to be reassessing their approach amid growing uncertainty. Around the training ground, the mood is described as tense but focused, though a few raised eyebrows hint that the unexpected update has disrupted preparations. One insider murmured that it was ideal timing, especially given how meticulously the squad had been gearing up for this encounter. Across the divide, Rangers appear to have received the news with a calm assurance. There's no suggestion of celebration, but rather a quiet belief that circumstances may now be aligning in their favor. It's the sort of subtle psychological edge that can loom large on an occasion like this. Speculation continues to swirl over the exact nature of the development. Some point toward a potential selection dilemma for FALKIRK, others hint at internal reshuffling that could alter their shape. Whatever the truth, It has injected an extra layer of intrigue into what was already a keenly anticipated fixture. Supporters, meanwhile, have been left to piece together fragments, debating fiercely over what it all might mean. In Scottish football, rumors have a habit of taking on a life of their own, and this one is no different, growing with every passing hour. Whether it proves decisive or fades into nothing more than pre-match chatter remains to be seen. But for now, the narrative has shifted, and FALKIRK find themselves under a cloud of doubt, while Rangers look on, perhaps sensing an opportunity in the air. Greetings, fans. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned.